You're listening to TIMESTAND the Theory.
Hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand is a measurement of the change in the consumption of a product in relation to a change in its price. Economists use price elasticity to understand how supply and demand for a product change when its price changes. Like demand, supply also has an elasticity, known as price elasticity of supply. Price elasticity of supply refers to the relationship between change in supply and change in price. It's calculated by dividing the percentage change in quantity supplied by the percentage change in price. Together, the two elasticities combine to determine what goods are produced at what prices. Economists have found that the prices of some goods are very inelastic. That is, a reduction in price does not increase demand much, and an increase in price does not hurt demand, either. For example, gasoline has little price elasticity of demand. Drivers will continue to buy as much as they have to, as will airlines, the trucking industry, and nearly every other buyer. Other goods are much more elastic, so price changes for these goods cause substantial changes in their demand or their supply. Not surprisingly, this concept is of great interest to marketing professionals. It could even be said that their purpose is to create inelastic demand for the products that they market. They achieve that by identifying a meaningful difference in their products from any others that are available. If the quantity demanded of a product changes greatly in response to changes in its price, it is elastic. That is, the demand point for the product is stretched far from its prior point. If the quantity purchased shows a small change after a change in its price, it is inelastic. The quantity didn't stretch much from its prior point. Factors that affect price elasticity of demand. The first factor is availability of substitutes. The more easily a shopper can substitute one product for another, the more the price will fall. For example, in a world in which people like coffee and tea equally, if the price of coffee goes up, people will have no problem switching to tea, and the demand for coffee will fall. This is because coffee and tea are considered good substitutes for each other. The second factor is urgency. The more discretionary a purchase is, the more its quantity of demand will fall in response to price increases. That is, the product demand has greater elasticity. When you are considering buying a new washing machine, but the current one still works, it's just old and outdated. If the price of a new washing machine goes up, you're likely to forego that immediate purchase and wait until prices go down or the current machine breaks down. The less discretionary a product is, the less its quantity demanded will fall. Inelastic examples include luxury items that people buy for their brand names. Addictive products are quite inelastic, as are required add-on products, such as inkjet printer cartridges. One thing all these products have in common is that they lack good substitutes. If you really want an Apple iPad, then a Kindle Fire won't do. Addicts are not dissuaded by higher prices, and only HP ink will work in HP printers, unless you disable HP cartridge protection. The third factor is duration of price change. The length of time that the price change lasts also matters. Demand response to price fluctuations is different for a one-day sale than for a price change that lasts for a season or a year. Clarity of time sensitivity is vital to understanding the price elasticity of demand and for comparing it with different products. Consumers may accept a seasonal price fluctuation rather than change their habits. Types of price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand can be categorized according to the number calculated by dividing the percentage change in quantity demanded by the percentage change in price. The first type is perfectly inelastic demand. A perfectly inelastic demand is one when there is no change produced in the demand of a product with change in its price. The numerical value for perfectly inelastic demand is 0. It can be interpreted that the movement in price does not show any change in the demand of a product. The demand remains constant for any value of price. Perfectly inelastic demand is a theoretical concept and cannot be applied in a practical situation. However, in case of essential goods, such as salt, the demand does not change with change in price. Therefore, the demand for essential goods is perfectly inelastic. The second type is inelastic demand. Relatively inelastic demand is one when the percentage change produced in demand is less than the percentage change in the price of a product. For example, if the price of a product increases by 30% and the demand for the product decreases only by 10%, then the demand would be called relatively inelastic. The numerical value of relatively elastic demand ranges between 0 to 1. Marshall has termed relatively inelastic demand as elasticity being less than unity. It can be interpreted from that the proportionate change in demand is relatively smaller than the proportionate change in price. Relatively inelastic demand has a practical application as demand for many of products respond in the same manner with respect to change in their prices. The third type is unit elastic demand. When the proportionate change in demand produces the same change in the price of the product, the demand is referred as unitary elastic demand. The numerical value for unitary elastic demand is equal to 1. The demand curve for unitary elastic demand is represented as a rectangular hyperbola. The fourth type is elastic demand. Relatively elastic demand refers to the demand when the proportionate change produced in demand is greater than the proportionate change in price of a product. The numerical value of relatively elastic demand ranges between 1 to infinity. Mathematically, relatively elastic demand is known as more than unit elastic demand, EP greater than 1. For example, if the price of a product increases by 20% and the demand of the product decreases by 25%, then the demand would be relatively elastic. It can be interpreted that the proportionate change in demand is relatively larger than the proportionate change in price. Relatively elastic demand has a practical application as demand for many of products respond in the same manner with respect to change in their prices. For example, the price of a particular brand of cold drink increases from 15 to 20. In such a case, consumers may switch to another brand of cold drink. However, some of the consumers still consume the same brand. Therefore, a small change in price produces a larger change in demand of the product. The fifth type is perfectly elastic demand. When a small change in price of a product causes a major change in its demand, it is said to be perfectly elastic demand. In perfectly elastic demand, a small rise in price results in fall in demand to zero, while a small fall in price causes increase in demand to infinity. The degree of elasticity of demand helps in defining the shape and slope of a demand curve. Therefore, the elasticity of demand can be determined by the slope of the demand curve. Flatter the slope of the demand curve, higher the elasticity of demand. It can be interpreted that at price, demand is infinite. However, a slight rise in price would result in fall in demand to zero. It can also be interpreted that at price, consumers are ready to buy as much quantity of the product as they want. However, a small rise in price would resist consumers to buy the product. If this knowledge benefits you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for the next knowledge. Thank you and see you in class.